Media in Africa is hard, okay? Tech media, which is niche, is even harder.
Around 2014, 15, 16, the community was still small.
You had the likes of Techloy, who had a site reporting tech news. Then there were some guys who started Techbit. I think that was where Adewale was before they decided to start Techpoint.
You called it tech blogging then, it was still seeing like a hobby.
I just sat down one day, I wanted to catch up with what was going on in tech. It was very, very early days. But I realized the only platform there, the voice wasn't for everybody. It was just like few people focusing the conversation.
Techpoint definitely was one of the platforms that I used for education, to learn about the ecosystem.
What he told me is that we need to make tech simpler to ordinary people.
Techpoint had a cause and they went at it. So every challenge was an upliftment for them.
They had this passion about it, which I didn't see, with others.
There were people that were doing these things, tech reporting before we came on, and not to bash their passion. It was a wonderful time. But we also wanted a space there, and people didn't take us seriously at first.
So before Techpoint, I've done a lot of things, a lot of things. I remembered I worked at a blog called Techpoint, and then later the platform kind of went down, transition, all those things. Then I left, I went fully into photography. After my doing photography, I just sat down one day, I wanted to catch up with what was going on in tech. It was very, very early days. But I realized the only platform there, the voice wasn't for everybody. It was just like few people focusing the conversation.
You had the likes of Techloy or Techbit. I think that was where Adewale was before they decided to start Techpoint.
So a lot of people couldn't join. I was like, there should be something for this. So I just had it at the back of my mind that I would do it. And I remember taking a photography for one startup I've covered at Techbit, which is Adewale Yusuf Game Soul. And I was in his office documenting. I was like, oh, this. I said, yeah, I'm going to do this, but I don't have resources to do it now. And he said, oh, no, why not do it? You understand? You can look for support, we'll support you, all those things. I'm like, okay, maybe I can do it. And that was 2014. So I started planning to launch it in 2015. Then I started reaching out to some people. I think the first person I reached out to was Odun. And then Odun brought in Daniel.
I was very excited about working at a tech publication that was new, and it was I was pretty sure about what it wanted to be from what I could see. So yeah.
And so we did a lot of articles and we scheduled it to be launched on 1st of January 2015.
How I met Wale, I was doing a review of a Nokia phone then. Nokia Ice, it had this Ice design thing to it, and I needed photos taken. And so someone mentioned, at that time I was at Techaba, and so Bankole mentioned, oh, there's a guy that can take photos for us, and then connected us and we met at CC Hub.
You would think the phone was actually a model, like we were just saying this thing.
Somebody was PP for this thing. So that was the first time we met, and I'm sure that at that time we both noticed that passion.
We were able to sync well. You understand? And also I follow his write-up. I just okay.
Adewale told me about Techpoint, I think early 2015. I already knew Adewale probably 5 years before then. He was my mentee.
So Wale would normally come around with great ideas, some of them very hairy ideas. But he always seemed to have something to say about what he was doing.
So when he told me about Techpoint, I had the privilege to review what the vision is, and he was able to sound convincing, not just in that of what he had in mind, but he was also able to convince a very competent co-founder in Muyiwa.
I think the first thing I told him was I'm done with this tech journalism thing, I'm tired, because it was taking a toll on my health and whatnot.
And I didn't talk to him until another 1 week, and I went to meet him and said, see, I think you should join me. And I was so motivated then. I just watched one Steve Jobs movie, or I just read it somewhere, how he was able to convince Scully, which was a former CEO, former CEO of Pepsi then, that was like, hey, do you want to sell water? Do you want to sell sugar water the rest of your life? Or you want to join me to build something?
You call it tech blogging then, it was still seen like a hobby, not... everybody was trying to figure out how to make a business or like a proper business or career out of this. And he painted this picture of how that is possible, how we can interview all the hard-hitting people who are really doing, like people who are not necessarily the popular, but they're actually either setting the foundation for the tech space, or they are, like making important moves that we're not aware of. I'm like, okay, interesting, but at that time I was doing like a kind of a short-term gig at Y Niger. So I was like, well, I'm busy with this right now. The contract is running till January. We don't know whether we're renewing, but I'll be watching what you are doing. Just go ahead. And so I think he launched January 1st, sent me a link. And as I was seeing the articles that were coming out, I was like, okay, this is interesting.
It was a lot of like entertainment writing. I wrote a few like semi-satirical pieces, like how to tell all the tech bro cliches at the time they existed and why I thought they were valid.
Something happened in February that really changed, like we really wanted to do this, that really also made us unique. So in January, I released the office picture, office tour. That was where we started the tour. Office tour of Jobberman. I remember using fisheye lens and our server started crashing. The traffic was crazy.
It was just very different and no one else on the continent was doing that.
They actually took it home. They actually, made startups real, the whole concept of startups real.
I didn't know that for the first time, that was when people see what it look like to work in a tech company or to see a first office of a tech company. It's not Google or Microsoft.
And so eventually I agreed to join, I believe February 1st. Or February 2nd was the official day I joined.
After he joined in February, we didn't have salary to pay for March. In March, when there was no salary, I had to tell people like, oh, don't like this. It was just two of us left. It was Muyiwa and I.
I remember we were squatting at a friend's office on the island, Okwawu. I don't know if you mentioned Okwawu. So we would go maybe just once a week there and try and work from there. But usually most of what was happening, like he said, the Techpoint was just me and him at the point, and the idea was just maybe he found a story. Like for example, I remember when we went to the Conga warehouse. That was the first time, and probably only time anybody has ever like given people a view of the back end of what was going on at an e-commerce warehouse store. We would just come around and I say, hey, Alpha, what are you doing? Come to Ushudi. We want to do this. I'll carry my mother's car. I'll go and meet him.
Now it's a company. It's good to call it a company now. Yes, and then it wasn't anything. We didn't know what we were doing. And I remembered like it was a very difficult time. Also, we were early. People won't open office to us because who are these people? That people will ignore us. People will insult us.
One person.
Yeah, you don't like it.
I don't want to say that word.
Yeah. Sheriff was my friend and my neighbor.
And then I was like, okay, we want to do an editorial on your website.
He was the first person that paid us. I think maybe 50,000 naira then or something.
But I actually didn't know I was the first customer until last week.
Your first customer is the person that will tell you like, you have a business here. You understand? And those people that believes in you, and I'm grateful for that. I remember then, I think it was around June that year, my mentor, which is James Forward, he came back from the US then. And that's one of the things I always tell people. Sometimes your mentee doesn't need another inspiration. He or she just need a lifeline to just go on. I remember Forward, he coming to town and we just had a meeting. So, I like what you guys are doing, all those things. I just told him like, bros, this is the end of the show.
What he told me is that we need to make tech simpler to ordinary people. When he talked about investment and stuff, I didn't necessarily have, all the fund and everything, but my passion spoke faster than my brain could. And I'm like, we're going to have to get the money.
So he invested something very small, and that was what gave us the life support. For the first year, we couldn't afford to hire anybody. And it just looked like things are not going to grow. Then I think like maybe towards the end of the year or to early 2016, we started adding 1 or 2 people. And we're just a bunch of guys. If I
joining Techpoint was out of curiosity.
Victor,
I like the mission.
You, myself, Emmanuel.
I joined immediately after Ifeanyi.
We just moved into a tiny office that I told you, like, if we talk too much, someone was not even called. We were very small. And we now wanted to interview the first HR kind of a person to come, Bomi.
And after I was offered the job, I sent Adewale and Muyiwa a shocker email telling them I was pregnant, 5 months pregnant. Maybe if I had waddled into the office, they would be like, oh, can this person do the job and all that?
So we were just like, oh, let's hire someone, let's get it done.
And then there was a drive to also bring in more women. Then Tola came.
A few months after I resigned at my job and joined Techpoint as a managing editor.
One of the things that was very inspiring and I think it comes easy to widely was the quality of photography that Techpoint had. You could not find that anywhere on the continent. And yeah, when I went back to Kenya, I started talking with Adewale and I'm like, yeah, let's tell some Kenyan stories.
I think Ifeanyi was covering the SME with small businesses and Victor was testing tech gadgets. I think that was the thing. And I was very focused on storytelling, which I felt was a missing component within that space at the time.
Storytelling is very important for those early majority who you really need to be able to build a business.
So it was a different breath of fresh air for you to have a tech blog that you are not reaching out to beg to carry out your story.
We started getting people phoning the office and being like, oh man, you guys' article was so great. Thank you for saying the things you said. You're speaking my mind. And every single day, it kept on getting more and more and more. I'm not sure if they're aware, but I mean, I got invited to quite a few places off the back of that article. I think for 2 or 3 years in a row, I was invited to Cape Town, which I've never stopped going to since then, to come and do talks. It was amazing. So the article did a lot for us. It did a lot for our business. It did a lot for me personally. And it ended up not being negative at all.
Some of these stories become leading stories for even global networks to be able to latch onto, because the feature on CNN was actually an inbound. It came directly from CNN reaching out to us saying, look, you guys, we want to tell your story. And I do believe it was actually because of the Techpoint story.
The drive to achieve the ultimate was bigger than the problem.
It was the beginning of that ecosystem. And we were just the right media just to be there.
So yeah, we were hustling, chasing stories, trying to stay afloat, and then out of nowhere, Mark Zuckerberg is in Lagos, in Yaba, just a couple 100 meters from us, and we're not there. And we didn't know it yet at that time, but our story was about to change.